Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. As always, this is your host, Stewart Kraintz. We are here with another episode of Your Inside Track to Success. As always, please be sure to hit like, subscribe, share this out with one person if you get any value from today's conversation. And I know you will, because we've got an expert on the show today who's going to be here to explain more about something we discuss a lot here on the show, and that is our addiction to our phones. So this is somebody who is an expert in digital minimalism. He coaches people in detoxing off of their pocket-sized technology to support them, not only in creating greater productivity for themselves, but also a higher standard of living. And so without further ado, I want to welcome Håvard Melå on the show. Håvard, thank you so much for being here today.
I'm really excited about it, and thanks a lot as well for having me.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate you being here. I'm excited to dive right in. It comes up on nearly every conversation I have on this podcast about kind of how we can't live without our phones, yet they cause a lot of the issues that we have today. So, just to kick us off, how did you become so concerned with this problem, and what prompted you to write two books about it?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a long story, to be honest. I can take you through like a short version. I would say like in my late teens, early 20s, I spent a lot of time online, like in a very unproductive way, let's say. I was watching a lot of YouTube videos, spending way more time on Netflix than than like what is healthy. I was like even watching a lot of porn, and like in general, I just couldn't control my digital habits at all.
Mhm.
As I got like a bit older, like early 20s, I really started to kind of connect the dots by reading online about dopamine, how dopamine works, how the brain works. And I started to realize that a lot of the issues I was experiencing in my life in that period, like social anxiety, a bit of depression, like lack of energy, I started to realize that maybe it was not the only reason, but I realized that the way I was interacting with my digital devices had a big impact on all this, because it's very easy, like if you spend 8 hours a day on your phone, like just scrolling and getting all this stimulation, it's very hard to have a lot of energy to do other things well. So I just kind of realized like how much it was holding me back. And then when I finally managed to actually put the phone away and starting studying, I had like so much more time for other things and so much more energy, and I felt so much better that I wanted to share. I wanted like other people to realize how big of an impact this can actually have on them to be more disciplined with their digital habits. So that's why I decided to write about it.
I love it. And we're so glad you're here to dispense your wisdom. How does someone get started with overhauling and fixing their digital habits so that they're not spending hours a day on social media or wherever else?
Yeah, I think like people have different starting points, let's say. Like some people live like generally happy and productive lives. They just spend like a bit more time on social media than they would want to. Like those kind of situations are easier to fix. I think like a big easy way to kind of spend less time on the phone is to just remove all the notifications that are not like really necessary. For
Mhm.
example, if you only have notifications for people calling you and let's say text messages, and you turn off everything else, it's going to be a lot easier to not waste a lot of time online. So I think that's like, yeah, first step everybody kind of needs to take. And also, I guess a lot of people have a lot of different social media accounts. Like they have Instagram, they have Facebook, they have
Yep.
WhatsApp, they have Snapchat, they have TikTok, like a lot of different things. And I think it can be wise to kind of think about what do you really need. Like, I'm not saying necessarily delete all social media, but I think it can be nice to kind of, let's say, you think you need Facebook and you need like one other or whatever it is, and like kind of focus on those two, and don't have like 50 different social media apps constantly giving you notifications, then it's going to be really hard to stay away. So I think, yeah, notifications, turning off everything that's not necessary and kind of limiting the social media apps you have is like a good starting point. But I also think a lot of this is about like going deeper, actually thinking about, for example, like how do you really want to spend your time? At least for me, that was like very impactful to really think through like on a deeper level. What do I want to do with my life? What kind of person do I want to become? What kind of things do I really want to spend my time on? Like what kind of interests do I really have? And like in my experience, like going really deep this way has been like very, very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And, it's such a challenging thing because we all want to live happy, fulfilled, meaningful lives. And we also, I think, develop a lot of emotional and psychological attachments to these endless dopamine generating devices that are just at our fingertips and in our pockets all day long. Have you had any examples of the folks you've worked with, the consulting you've done, where people have created massive results by cutting back significantly on their phone time?
Yeah, I can speak like from personal experience, and also most of the coaching I've done has been with porn addiction.
Sure.
So I guess that's a bit similar, but I can start like in my own experience. So I would say it was in early 2019 that I really managed to cut down my screen time a lot. So in this period of my life, I turned off the internet every day at 10 p.m. And to fill the time with something else, I just started reading a lot of books. That was really, really nice. Like I learned a lot of stuff. But what was really interesting was like how much more energy I got suddenly. Like not only did I feel like a lot better in my daily life, but I was like always quite introverted. But when I
Mhm.
cut down my screen time, I suddenly felt way more compelled to spend time with people, like actually. Yeah, and also with the coaching I've done with porn addiction, I guess this is like a bit of a controversial topic because a lot of people watch it. Not everybody agrees that it's a bad thing, and maybe some people can get away with watching it and it doesn't really affect their life that much. But personally, like for me and a lot of other people I know as well, and also people I've coached, is that it's a very like potent stimuli that affects our dopamine levels a lot. So essentially, it desensitizes our reward system. Um, Basically, it makes us less driven to accomplish things in real life, and obviously also pursue like connections with other people,
Mhm.
especially in the romantic setting. But yeah, so a lot of people I know, they have experienced like way more drive and energy in life to just they just have so much more energy and interest in life, let's say, when they cut down this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I actually really appreciate you bringing this up and making sure we get to talk about it a little bit because it is kind of a weird subject. It's something that we all know is there. Pornhub is the single biggest website in the world. I don't know the numbers, but it is by several orders of magnitude the largest website in terms of visits, time spent on the website, any website out there. And everybody knows about it. Most people have probably been there, and yet no one talks about it and the harm that it causes to us emotionally, psychologically. And I actually think what you brought up is key here. How we connect with and relate to other human beings is impaired as well. Knowing that this is something that disproportionately affects men more than it does women, do you have any special suggestions for men who are listening to this and are possibly struggling with a porn habit themselves?
Yeah, I think most people find themselves in a position where they watch it like occasionally or regularly, and they don't really think it has a big impact on their life. I would say this, like, if you find yourself in that position, like try to go a month without it and see what happens. And I think most people would really struggle with doing that. I kind of look at it like it's kind of being having this like cannonball chain to your foot. At least that was how it felt for me. Like when I actually managed to quit watching porn, it's like more than 2 years ago. I watched it the last time. I felt it's like I was operating at 20% of my potential, and I never realized it before I actually quit it. So I would just say, like, what is there to lose to try to go without it for a month? I think a lot of people would be really surprised by what will happen if they tried, because it has a lot of positive effects on the mind. Like you feel more focused, you get more energy in your daily life. There's a lot of benefits that a lot of people have experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I may, this is actually something I have not discussed on this show, but pornography addiction is something that I dealt with for a very, very long time. And in meeting my wife, Jennifer, I knew going into that relationship that there was something very special here. It was something that I needed to kick to the curb because I wanted to give this relationship the best possible chance at succeeding. And I did. And I haven't looked at it, haven't watched it since the relationship began. And it was a huge struggle for me at first, and it was something that I really had to commit to, like no shit, to not slip up. But I can definitely look you in the eye, Havard, and say that I do have more energy. I am able to focus more. I'm just more creative in my everyday. And I look back even at some past relationships I had and wonder, to an extent, I mean, I still think I was meant to end up with my wife, Jen, but I do wonder what might have been different had I not had this problem, or if I had worked my way through it. And so, to anybody listening to this, I strongly encourage you to pick up any of Havard's books, like really do a deep dive on this for yourself so that if you're struggling with a pornography addiction, you take the time to work through it for yourself and regain something that maybe you're missing and you don't know that you are. I'm wondering if you have any other insights on that, Havard.
First off, like, thanks for sharing that, and very cool to hear that you managed to overcome it. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I just think like it's holding a lot of people back, and they don't necessarily realize it. At least that was how it was for me. I remember I started Googling. I think it was like it's almost 10 years ago. I started to Google like is porn unhealthy, because I was kind of starting to realize I felt like a lot of things were going pretty badly in my life. I kind of suspected that it was porn was one of the reasons, so I started Googling it. And what I came across first was like a lot of, let's say, mainstream media articles saying that porn is actually healthy. It's good to watch it, those kind of things. And then I came across some other websites like yourbrainonporn.com, and some different resources. They also laid out the science behind it, and that was like so helpful. Like without that, I don't know where I would be today. So I'm really grateful for those websites. And I think quite a lot of people find themselves in this position. They Google it, they see like a lot of different, let's say, some people claim it's not healthy, some people claim it's like no problem, and it's kind of hard to know what's actually the truth. And I would just say, like, why not just give it a shot, see what happens if you go without it? And I can almost guarantee you will feel like way better.
Just a testimony from me to you, the listeners, like I have more energy every day. I exercise significantly more often. In that way, it's actually been part of me getting back into the best shape as possible since high school varsity basketball. And this is as somebody who's in his mid 30s. So, folks, you heard it here first. Like, if you are somebody or if somebody is struggling with pornography, definitely seek help, look for support. We will definitely put the websites that Havard mentioned in the comments section so that you can get some support. And kicking this as a habit. Håvard, I want to pivot slightly. I know that your most recent book is a bit more about just living a decluttered lifestyle, free from the constant distractions and dopamine drain that is social media and our phones. Is it possible to basically be a pure minimalist digitally in an era where so much of our lives revolves around the internet?
Yeah, so I think at least it depends maybe a bit how you define it. Like I have a friend, for example, who right now he doesn't have a smartphone. He just has this old school phone and a computer he uses occasionally, and he manages to get by. It's like it's harder to do some things, but he gets by, and he really likes this lifestyle. So that's good for him. Personally, I have a smartphone. I have a computer. So for me, it's more like my approach is I can have some social media accounts. I can watch YouTube occasionally if it's like productive or I learn something from it. So for me, it's about discipline. Like I want to have access to the internet and all the tools we have, because the internet is probably the best resource that exists, and it's a fantastic way to learn things and all that. So I think discipline and like being a bit mindful is the thing that makes it possible to use the internet without like losing all this time and having it like drain our energy. So yeah, for me personally, I have social media. I don't use it a lot, but I use it a little bit. I sometimes I watch Netflix, but it's not very often. So I do these things, but I'm very conscious about not letting it spiral out of control. And I think that's the hard part, because these things are set up in a way to like kind of make us lose control. So that's kind of the things and tips and tricks I talk about in my book, like how do I actually have access to these tools without losing control. And I think a lot of it is about like going deeper, as I mentioned a bit before, like
Mhm.
being very clear on what you want out of life, and kind of just being very conscious about how we're spending our time on life.
So what you're suggesting, and I'm just making up an example here, it's the difference between sitting down and saying, I'm going to watch one, maybe two episodes of this show on Netflix. I'm not going to just sit there and keep letting the episodes run and repeat over and over and over.
Yeah, that's one thing. And I also think discipline is like a big key here, like willpower, self-control, or discipline, whatever you want to call it. Because I think a lot of it comes down to, do you have enough self-control to say like, okay, now it's enough. I have to go back to do something here. Because it's so much easier to just like play the next video, because we constantly have these dopamine loops that we can fall into. And I think one thing is self-control. And the good thing is self-control is actually something you can train. So just as an example, like if you go to the gym 3 days a week, and that's kind of hard, you're actually building your willpower, self-control through doing those things. It's kind of like every time you do something you don't really feel like doing, you
Mhm.
can train your self-control because it's kind of like a muscle. So
Yeah.
you can look at it like every time you do something that's a bit uncomfortable, you're actually building your self-control muscles. And you can use those same muscles to put down the phone when you realize like, okay, now I just scroll for 10 minutes. I need to do something else. Then you're essentially using the same muscle when you just put the phone away and you go back to your life.
So something that I feel like comes up a lot on this show, so I want to ask you your opinion. How does self-control, how does that relate to self-worth?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think like if you feel good about yourself in general and you feel like your time is valuable, it's gonna be easier to have the self-control to do the right things. So I guess it could be related a bit in that way. Like if you believe that your time is worth nothing, then why not spend all your time watching porn or on Netflix? So I guess it's a bit related that way. It's easier to like say no and like use your self-control if you believe your time is actually valuable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we've had a lot of other experts on the show who all relate self-worth back to self-discipline and boundaries actually being an act of self-love and self-kindness. So wanted to hear it from you.
Yeah, that's a really cool question actually.
Awesome. glad glad you thought so. Havar, we are going to begin to start winding this down. Where can folks connect with you, continue the conversation offline, and obviously get your book so that they can begin working on detoxing digitally?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to connect with me is to visit my website, håvardmelå.com. You can find my books there and a few interviews I've done in the past. So yeah, that's the easiest way to find me.
Awesome. And folks, as always, we will have all of Havard's information made readily available so that you can continue the conversation with him directly off of the podcast. Ask more questions than we were able to get through today. And, Havard, one of the things that I ask everybody on this show before they head out, before we sign off, what are you acknowledging yourself for today?
Acknowledging myself. I'm very happy that I had a kind of rough day at work, and then I had like a decision: do I want to go to jiu-jitsu practice or not? And I decided to go, so I'm really happy about that. I got to use my self-control muscles, and that's going to be really important if I feel like scrolling too much on my phone or something later. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that. And way to practice exactly what you're preaching. I acknowledge you for that. Folks, this has been another episode of Your Inside Track to Success. As always, I'm your host, Stewart Kraintz. We will catch you next week with another amazing guest or message. We'll see you then.